Welcome to the Tamworth FC Social, a podcast all about Tamworth Football Club. The Lambs are now on a 3-game winning streak, including 2 away victories and a clean sheet. I'm Jonathan and I'm joined by Brett to discuss Tamworth's wins at Braintree and AFC Fylde. Well, Brett, these last 2 matches have gone even better than I think we could have imagined, really. Two away wins on the trot, and Tamworth hadn't won an away game, had they, until this, and a clean sheet at Braintree as well.
Yeah, before we came on air, I was thinking about the last podcast that I was on with Chris, and I'd said that we needed to get realistically probably 10 points out of these games. And Chris had said, I don't want to be putting any pressure on, with some away games coming up, but we need to start picking up some points. We've done exactly that. I said 10 points. We've already got 9. And I think, fair play to the lads. I think the performance on Tuesday against Fylde in particular was really good. It was really refreshing to see the way that we came out of the blocks, the way that we set up, the way we played. We weren't afraid. And I just think back to the York game, way back at the start of the season. It's almost like a unrecognisable kind of performance. I think that was more of a typical Tamworth performance that you would have seen probably last season. A team playing with confidence, knew what each other wanted to do. And obviously now probably, we're 11 games in. It's probably started to gel a little bit. I think everyone knows it, starting to get to know each other's games with the new players and the expectation that's coming from the league. I think, 3 wins back to back to back, you just start feeling a lot better around what's going on around you. Clearly, it's not going to continue. It'd be nice if it would. It's a good bit of momentum carrying us into what is a couple more winnable games. And yeah, credit to the lads for the way they've got these results as well, because 2 games, 2 last-minute goals out of nowhere as well, really. Different goal scorers as well. It's good to get different. That's 3 different goal scorers, all with their first goal of the season over the last 2 games as well. Fair play. Really, really pleased. I'm really pleased for the team as well, the effort they've put in. No
mean feat as well to limit Nick Horton from Fylde to just scoring the penalty against them, because he's still the top scorer in the National League. Like he's been brilliant so far. And I thought it was interesting when you likened the recent performances to what you might have seen last season, because Andy Peake's won Manager of the Week, didn't he? Had a few Tamworth players in Teams of the Week as well, which we got quite used to last season. You generally have maybe 1 or 2 in the Team of the Week. I seem to remember Andy Peake's won a couple of those Manager of the Week awards that the sponsor gives out as well. Really good for the likes of Dan Creaney to get a goal as well, because it's not going to be always Chris Ray who's the focal point of the attack. And it's good when you have that genuine option to start a game or to come off the bench, isn't it? To actually try something a bit different up front.
Yeah, and congratulations to Andy Peake's on Manager of the Week. Absolutely deserved. And it just shows that his hard work's paid off as well, moulding the team that he has, and the teams that he's selected and the tactics he's employed. So well done that man as well. Continues to amaze all of us. So well done for that. And that's what's been important out of these wins as well, that it has been different people contributing as well. Because if we get to, let's say, I don't know, Christmas, and we've certainly got Chris Ray and a couple of others contributing to the goals, that's when bigger clubs start looking, which is great for them. And I'm not saying that is going to happen or it isn't going to happen, but then that's suddenly where, let's say they were to leave and then we don't have anything as a backup and then we struggle. Whereas at least this is building confidence throughout the team. There was no Jordan Cullinane-Liebert, there was no Ben Acquaye. You've still got Fletcher injured. Matt Curley's only made it to the bench. So it's a very unsettled team at the moment as well. We've had to change a winning team over the last couple of games and we're still getting those results. That's even more encouraging. When we look back to what you've just said about Fylde and Nick Houghton with the 10 goals that he's got already, he makes some odds to us really, but I was quite surprised with the way that Fylde set up. I didn't really think a professional team in this league would play in a way where they are essentially relying on one player. And if I'm being really honest, I think that's the way that Fylde play. They are relying on Houghton to score those goals. But, it worked to our advantage and fair play to the lads for getting it done. But I do think that actually you look at Fylde and at least we aren't relying on one person to get us the goals.
Really good habit to have as well, scoring late goals, because both Braintree and Fylde were stoppage time winners. That must come from Andy Peake's kind of, spreading that confidence and, going right to the very last. That is obviously you don't want to leave it that late every time, but it's a really kind of good habit. I was sort of thinking it's almost like the National League equivalent of Fergie time, is it? When you'd get the old Manchester United teams and you'd be like, well, there's going to be a chance here. That I mean, if Tamworth can kind of cultivate that spirit going forward, that's going to be really useful because there's going to be times where Tamworth are chasing late goals.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what's really good about late goals like that is there's absolutely no coming back from that. There's no answer to conceding it. Literally last kick of the ball. You might manage to get the ball at the other end of the pitch, but you're not going to get to do anything else with it. So, again, breeds confidence. And for Tom Tonks to score the goal the way that he did, that has also got quite a bit of exposure for the club again. It was on Central News start of the week. It's been on Sport Bible. It's been shared all over the place, really. So it gets people looking, it gets people interested. That's a good feeling. And they're talking about, the performance. Well, they're not even talking about the performance either. They're just talking about that goal and Tom Tonks in particular. But they're talking about Tamworth. They're talking about that game, that goal. They're good things to be recognised for. Back-to-back wins. And then now you're talking back-to-back-to-back wins. It's good because probably in 2 months' time, being realistic, we'll be talking about something else where we've struggled in games. But for now, we've got some momentum and some real good mentions again, like last season.
I don't think there's anything wrong with if Tamworth do, in October onwards experience a slightly tougher run of games, because we probably would have looked at these fixtures on paper at the start of the season and thought, well, August will be tough. September does look a little bit kinder, and so it's proved. And I think that the good thing is now Tamworth do have a buffer, don't they, between themselves and the bottom four. It's not the end of the world if a couple of the teams below them gain a little bit of ground, because Tamworth have pulled some really good results out of the bag in the last few weeks.
I think what's really, really important is we've probably beat the teams that we should be beating. You'd look at teams where you'd say, I'm disappointed we didn't get something from that game. Where you come away from the Hartlepool game where actually we've played well and we've ended up losing. Or we conceded a last minute goal against Sutton to drop 2 points. But other than probably the Boston away one, we have beat the teams that we should be beating. If you split the season up into quarters, let's say we get a point, just mathematically to make it a bit easier. Let's say we, after 12 games, end up with 15 points, half a season, that's 30, another half, that's 60. That's more than enough than what we need. The aim is probably 52, 53 points will see us safe. And we've put ourselves in a really good position for that after September. October is kind of a 50-50 bag, as is November. There aren't many games in December because of cups, and then then you start to talk about heavy pitches and everything else, and then you're halfway through and you start getting injuries and some more suspensions, etc. But we're doing everything that we possibly can right here, right now.
Just out of interest, where would you rank the Tonks goal in terms of like Tamworth's goals of the season? Because McGlinchey scored a pretty good goal at Fylde, didn't he? Like really good control of the ball and curled into the corner. And obviously there was Shakuna against Aldershot, Chris Ray at Boston. Would Tonks come out on top for you, or does the kind of, I suppose, the unusual nature of it make it a bit of a sort of outlier?
No, because a goal's a goal, isn't it? You think back to David Beckham against Wimbledon in the 90s. He may well have meant that. He may well have not. Yes, the keeper was off his line. But, if he was to have not scored that, it would have been no great shakes, really. But the fact that he did, obviously, it's a really memorable goal. It's exactly the same as that. If that had just gone over the bar and gone out for a corner or a throw in, nothing would be mentioned. But because it did go in, then yeah, it's a fantastic goal, and take nothing away from the fact that it was a great goal.
Sure, if Tom Tonks listens to the podcast, he'll be delighted with the David Beckham comparison there. And one thing David Beckham didn't really have in his skill set was a long throw. it's quite nice that Tom Tonks has been involved, a key role in both the winning goals of the last few matches as well. And it's on the bingo card every week, but a fantastic long throw again. Another team that's really struggled to defend it, and I don't think I'm going to get sick of the long throw anytime soon. I'm a really big fan. The Braintree game, though, judging from the highlights, it did look a different sort of game to the Fylde one. Whereas maybe against Fylde, it looked like Tamworth were creating a lot of chances. Braintree looked a little bit more one way. Tamworth had to be a bit patient with it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, just before that Tonks goal, Creaney did get the ball in it and it was offside. I think first half, from what I can make out, we had a good go at it and we were on top for a lot of that. And then they came out second half, made some bold substitutions. They took the captain off and changed things around and really switched up. And then we struggled with that. So yeah, I think we absolutely did have to be much more patient against Braintree than we did against Fylde. Because I feel like against Fylde, we were always in the game. I don't think we ever looked like losing that game. Whereas there was a long period against Braintree where you probably felt that a Braintree goal was going to come. And then actually you probably got to the 80th minute and you thought, okay, yeah, we'll be happy with this point here because that goal's probably not coming now. So a point will do. And then obviously we're going to completely turn it on its head, either through Dan Creaney if that goal's given, or obviously then it was the Tonks goal ultimately that won it. But I mean, if that Dan Creaney goal had been given, then Tonks isn't scoring that goal because then we're not playing like that, are we? But it's all everything happens for a reason. It all happens in sequence. So yeah, two different kind of games, different kind of performances, different kind of ways where we had to play differently.
I don't know. It might still be too early to look at the league table and seriously read too much into it. But just looking at the teams that are around Tamworth now, like Aldershot and Hartlepool are both below Tamworth. Like I would consider those two pretty big sides in this division. And then you've got the likes of Solihull, Yeovil, Southend in the positions above. I mean, those are all teams I would expect to be in and around the playoffs come the end of the season. I'm sure I'm probably getting carried away a little bit, but it's quite hard not to look at the league table and have a warm, fuzzy feeling inside at the moment.
Yeah, don't get carried away too early. This is Tamworth and this is the National League. But yeah, it's good to see, 16th, good bit of distance between us and the relegation zone. Good, is it 5 points? So what is really promising with that for me is that if we do end up having a stinker of a week and results do go against us, we still have a week's worth of a buffer. And I think that's really important while we're still chasing down this goal difference from Barnet. So yeah, really positive. And the Gateshead game now, obviously being played what was nearly 4 weeks later than it is. Not to take anything away from Gateshead, but obviously their form has started to falter slightly. So that game on the 8th of October is an easier game than what it was 3 weeks ago. So that will play into our hands. Long way for Gateshead to come on a Tuesday on a plastic pitch when, they're not high flying now. They haven't turned over every team that they've played. There's that little bit of doubt now started to get into their mindset, which is, it's just great for us. Obviously, we've got a couple more games to go by then. We could have won the next two before we get to that stage, but let's see.
Maybe Gateshead will dish out a few thrashings as well. So maybe we'll be eating our words a little bit by the time that game comes around. So this Saturday then, it is Altrincham at home. This is a game, I don't want to say it's like a free hit, but it certainly feels like there's less pressure compared to maybe other home games that have been played so far. And their sort of recent form, so until their victory over Dagenham on Tuesday night, they'd gone 3 games without a win. And then quite an interesting result they had on Saturday. So they played Boston at home, drew 2-2, but Boston had a man sent off on 50 minutes. Altrincham then went 2-0 up, and then Boston clawed it back to 2-2. So I'm sort of thinking, is there a little bit of a fragility there in this Altrincham side? Maybe Tamworth can expose a little bit.
Yeah, I think we've had some great games against Altrincham in the past, and there's going to be no love lost either between us and Altrincham. Years gone by when they had that 15-point deduction. I remember them holding up this big banner when we went there at their place, and it said, "You tried, you failed, we survived." or something along those lines. I'm sure the Altrincham fans will remember that more than what we do. And a great relationship that we had with Graham Heathcote over the years as well. A legend of non-league football that he is. But I'm sure it's going to be a great game. And I still think, although Altrincham obviously finished in the playoffs last year, that actually Altrincham and Tamworth are two relatively evenly sized teams. Similar kind of proximity to very successful Premier League clubs. Obviously, City and United more so than the Blues and the Villa, but still it's the same kind of catchment area, same kind of demographic. So I feel that actually very evenly matched team in terms of size and support. So regardless of the form going into it, I still think that these are the games that you start of the season that you'd look at and go, you should really probably be trying to get something out of Altrincham, even more so now the fact that it's home. We've been on the run that we've been on and they've had the run that they've had. So I'm sure it'll be a great game on Saturday.
Their results have been quite interesting so far, Altrincham. So they've had a 5-0 defeat already. That was away at Sutton, and then they've had a 4-0 win, which was at home against Ebbsfleet. And then I make it the rest of their matches. There's been like a few 1-0s, been a few 2-1s. Like they haven't really been winning games by huge scores or more than one, and they haven't really been losing games by more than one. So I wonder if that means it will be quite a cagey game on Saturday, and maybe that would suit Tamworth actually, given the recent run. Like there's no pressure on Tamworth to kind of push too many players forward. They can take their time a little bit, perhaps.
Yeah, and the home advantage is with us anyway. So really, it's for Altrincham to come and play and put us under pressure rather than the other way around. So I'm sure being at the Lamb will work in our advantage as well. And you're right. I think there were probably a couple of occasions against Fylde and definitely against Braintree where we did commit too many people forward and we probably ended up getting caught out at the back. But we don't need to do that against Altrincham. Really, like it should be at home. It's for teams to come at us and try and break us down while we play our game. So I think that'll work to our advantage, given on the back of 3 wins on the bounce as well, with lots of different people getting on the score sheet.
Let's do our predictions for Altrincham then. And a reminder, in our predictions mini league, you get 1 point for a correct result and 3 points for a correct scoreline. Head of Braintree, all 3 of us went for wins. Brett and I got the 1-0 scoreline bang on. Graham was the unlucky one who went for a 2-0. So that means 3 points each to Brett and myself and 1 for Graham. Brett's very happy with that. Ahead of Fylde, we had a win, a draw, and a loss between the 3 of us, which I think is a first for this season. I can't remember the last time we would have had that spread of results between us. Brett didn't get the scoreline right, but he did go for a victory, so he gets the point for that. I'll give myself an honourable mention as I went for 1-1, and that was obviously very close to being a reality until Dan Creaney's late winner. In terms of the league table, that means I move up to 12 points after the 2 matches, Graham up to 8, and Brett finally closing that gap. He's on 6 points, and he could leapfrog Graham if all goes his way this Saturday. So then, Brett, I'll let you go first. Altrincham at home, what is your scoreline prediction?
I think a 1-0 win. The way that Altrincham like to play. I think they may struggle to score a lot of goals. And then we've just got, 3 wins on the bounce. So we're going to be going into it full of confidence. Why shouldn't we? Got a couple of more players coming back as well over the weekend. So I would say I'm fairly confident that we're going to win this one. And it's another statement if we do. It's a team that were in the playoffs last season. We've got 4 wins on the back. And then suddenly you're probably looking at Halifax and thinking that's a game we could potentially go and win on the back of what's happened. We don't lose against Gateshead as well midweek, then yeah, I think we could really start building a bit of momentum with this. So I think 1-0 win, would be more than happy with that.
Good incentive as well, isn't there? Because Tamworth beat Altrincham, they'll overtake them in the table as well. I slightly have toed and froed over this prediction. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I was also thinking 0-0, but no one wants to see that. So my logic partly being, I think probably will be a low scoring affair. I think I will back Tamworth to play very well, but I just think I'm a big believer in like the sort of law of averages, if that makes sense. So I just think given the last 3 wins on the bounce, that run is going to come to an end eventually. I don't think a draw would be a bad result here because I mean that keeps things ticking over. Could well see Tamworth, jump up a few places in the league table depending on what happens elsewhere. But yeah, I'm going to go 1-1, but I wouldn't be hugely surprised if your 1-0 comes off, Brett. Do you have any final thoughts before Tamworth's game on Saturday?
Just to go to a point that Peake's made in his post-match interview after the Fylde game, and he's absolutely spot on with what he said, that it's a squad game. And we've had some players come into the last two games who you probably wouldn't really think would be in the starting 11 or even in the match day squad. I thought Carl Williams was really good against Fylde. And that's a player who struggled to get into the team last season. He's not featured much so far this season. And he's come in and he's played really well and ended up getting into the team in the midweek. So, really well done to him.
Right, then we'll leave it there for this episode of the Tamworth FC Social podcast. Thank you for listening. You can follow us on social media at TSU Social Pod. If you enjoy the podcast, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and give this episode a like. It really helps us grow our audience. Until next time, goodbye.